డైలాగ్ బాక్స్ వచ్చిందండి. ఓకే ఒకటేనా? Good afternoon, everybody. Today's class is about the muscles of the upper anterior abdominal wall. ఇదండి మూవ్ కట్టలేదు. Today's class is about the anterior abdominal wall. Coming the anterior abdominal wall, what are the learning objectives in the anterior abdominal wall that we will be seeing in today's classes? First, we will see the description of anterolateral muscles of the top of the abdomen, its vasculature, nerve supply, and clinical aspects of that muscles. When we see the descriptions of anterolateral muscles of the abdomen, we'll be seeing across the origin, insertion of the muscles. Yes. Before going into the top lateral muscles, anterolateral muscles of the abdomen, just we will have a overview of what does the anterior abdominal wall it consists of. The anterior abdominal wall consists of skin. This is that of your skin. Then beneath the skin, what you will be getting is superficial fascia. This superficial fascia is divided into two types. That is subcutaneous layer, which is consists of fascia camper and fascia scarpa, which is a superficial fatty layer and deep membranous layer. Along with it, in the same plane, we'll be also be getting some aponeurosis of the muscles, that is external oblique, internal oblique, transverse abdominis, what we'll be discussing in the later in the class. So that aponeurosis will be lying in this part. After that one, we will be coming across, after the this one we will be coming across the abdominal muscles. That abdominal muscles include that is rectus abdominis in the top here in the center, along the top here pyramidalis. There are two obliques at the anterolateral part. One is external oblique, one more is internal oblique, along with transversus, that is transversus abdominis. So today's class is about the top here. As I have started, the muscles are about anterolateral muscles. So altogether, if you have seen it, you would be coming across 5 muscles in the abdomen. There are about 3 flat muscles and 2 vertical muscles. The 3 flat muscles are external oblique, internal oblique, and transversus abdominis. The 2 vertical muscles are rectus abdominis and pyramidalis. So today's class will be around the top external oblique, internal oblique, and transverse abdominis only. That is about 3 flat muscles description will be seen. Yes. Now first coming to the top your first flat muscle, that is called as external oblique muscle. So what is the origin of the external oblique muscle? So when you see the origin of external oblique muscle, this is the external oblique muscle. These are the top of your ribs. Yes, external oblique muscles take origin from the outer surface of the top of your ribs and lower border of the top of your ribs. Outer surface and lower border of lower 8 ribs, it takes origin. All the fibers, the direction of the fibers is downward, forward, and medially. So all these fibers take origin from the top, the outer surface and lower border of lower 8 ribs. Some points that you have to come across when this external oblique aponeurosis is taking origin from these ribs. There are upper 4 digitation and lower 4 digitation of external oblique muscle. The upper 4 digitation of external oblique muscle, this is the upper 4 digitation of the external oblique muscle. They decussate with the top the serratus anterior muscle. Yes, they decussate with serratus anterior muscle. Same way, lower 4 fibers means when you see it, this is the top of your lower fibers. These are the upper fibers, these are the lower fibers. the lower set of the top of your fibers, they decussate with that of your muscle, which is that of your latissimus dorsi muscle. Means upper fibers of the top of your external oblique muscle interdigitate with serratus anterior, whereas the lower fibers of external oblique muscle interdigitate with latissimus dorsi. We can also say when it is coming above, it is also interdigitating with pectoralis major muscle. So when it is forming an aponeurosis and ending, so it is also, so above is pectoralis major, next upper fourth digitation with serratus anterior, lower fourth digitation with latissimus dorsi. These are the few points of the origin that you have to remember. So after the origin, the next is that of the insertion of the muscle. External oblique, which we are coming from the top, the outer borders of the top, the leaves of the ribs, the insertion is, these are the posterior fibers and these are the anterior fibers of external oblique. The posterior fibers, which are the fleshy fibers, they come vertically downwards and insert into the top of the iliac crest. What you are seeing, this is the iliac crest. So the posterior fibers, which are the fleshy fibers, which they come vertically downwards and insert into the top, the inner lip of the top of it. It inserts into the outer lip of the top of your iliac crest. So this is the iliac crest, which extends from anterior superior iliac spine to posterior superior iliac spine. So this is called as the iliac crest. This iliac crest consists of ventral segment and the dorsal segment. I think this you knew it already because we have done the top of your lower lip. So I am repeating it. Only this is the hip bone, which consists of ilium, ischium and the top of your pubis. So when you see the ilium, this is the crest of the top of your ilium, which extends from anterior superior to posterior superior iliac spine. This is again divided into ventral and the top of your dorsal segment, which consists of, this lip consists of, or this crest consists of three lips: inner lip, intermediate area and the outer lip. So what we have said is the fibers that are the fleshy fibers, that posterior fibers of the external oblique muscle, they come, descend downwards vertically and inserts into the top, the outer lip of the iliac crest. So this outer lip, they will be inserting it. So this is what the cut section, if you take the cut section of iliac crest, it consists of in this way. This is a ventral segment, this is a dorsal. In the ventral, it consists of three areas: outer, intermediate and the inner area. So this is the outer area, intermediate area and inner area. As we have discussed, the posterior fibers of the external oblique descend vertically downwards and insert into the outer lip of the iliac crest. So this is where we are getting inserted. Next, when they are inserting into the outer lip of iliac crest, we can see that, so when they are coming and inserting in this way, so these are the posterior fibers here. These posterior fibers consists of that of your two layers, that is, this is that of your anterior and that of the posterior boundary. The posterior boundary of the posterior fibers are the free, which is forming the boundary of, when you see here, when you are seeing here, they are forming a boundary of one of the triangle, which is called as lumbar triangle or petit triangle. So this is a posterior boundary of external oblique muscle. This is a free boundary of external oblique muscle, forming a boundary for that triangle, that is a lumbar triangle, which is bounded in front by the posterior border of the external oblique, behind by the anterior boundary of the top of your latissimus dorsi muscle. Lower part, it is formed by the top of the iliac crest. So this triangle is called as lumbar triangle or petit triangle, and the floor of this triangle is formed by internal oblique muscle. So this is a weak area. Normally herniation of the abdominal content can occur. So that time, it is that herniation is called as petit herniation at this part. So this is a weak area that we have to come across here. This is a posterior layer of the top here. Actually, it is a posterior boundary of the posterior fibers of the top here, external oblique, what you have seen here. So this is a posterior fibers, fleshy fibers, which consists of anterior and posterior. This posterior boundary is that which is forming anterior boundary of the lumbar triangle. It is forming an anterior boundary. So this is what it is, a lumbar triangle, which is a weak area. Normally herniation can occur. It is very rare. Next. So we have discussed about the posterior fibers. What happened for the remaining anterior fibers? The remaining anterior fibers that were coming from the top, the outer border or outer surface of the top of your lower 8 ribs, they descend downward, forward, medially, forms an aponeurosis. In this way, they will be forming an aponeurosis. So they forms an aponeurosis, get inserted from the top. This is a xiphoid process. This is a pubic tubercle with pubic crest. So they insert along the top the linea alba. This is called as a linea alba. So all other fibers which were coming, they form an aponeurosis and get inserted along the top the linea alba. They get inserted in this way. So when you come across, what is this linea alba? Linea alba is a white line. It is a bloodless area where it is formed by the top here. Decussation of the top here fibers of the either side. Means external oblique muscle forms an aponeurosis, same way internal oblique. So two sides the fibers come and interdigitate or interdecussate at this part and forms an area which is called as the top here linea alba. Because of that decussation, there forms the top here bloodless area. So this is called as linea alba, which extends from xiphoid process above to that of the symphysis pubis below. So this is about the top of your fibers. So we have seen the fibers of external oblique, posterior fibers which were coming from the top, the outer border of the top of your ribs. They are getting inserted into the top of your ventral segment of the top of your outer lip of the iliac crest. Other fibers, some of the fibers which were coming downward, forward, medially, forming an aponeurosis and inserting to the top of your linea alba. Some fibers of external oblique, so these are the remaining are the lower fibers. So these were about the top of your upper fibers, yeah. But when coming to the top of your lower fibers and along with this aponeurosis, the lower fibers along with the top of your lower part of the aponeurosis comes downwards, forms and thickened. It gets the external oblique aponeurosis gets thickened, folded by itself and forms a ligament which is called as inguinal ligament. This inguinal ligament extends from anterior superior iliac spine to the top of the pubic tubercle. So this is what it is forming. So this is an inguinal ligament which is forming by, means the lower fibers of the external oblique aponeurosis extends downwards, folded by itself, it gets thickened and grooved, thickened and extends from anterior superior iliac spine to the top of your pubic tubercle, forming in a ligament which is called as that of the inguinal ligament. So this is about the lower fibers insertion of external oblique. So we have seen the origin of the external oblique which was coming from the top, the outer border of the top of your ribs and the lower border of the ribs. So these fibers, remember, they consist of posterior fibers and anterior fibers. Posterior fibers gets inserted to the top of the outer lip of the top of your iliac crest. They will be inserting. When you see it forms a boundary, that is a petit triangle, it forms a boundary. But anterior fibers descend downward, forward, medially. Some of the fibers, they forms coming here at the musculoaponeurotic junction. This is a musculoaponeurotic junction. They insert into the top of the linea alba. This is a bloodless area which extends, which is formed by the decussation of the top of your fibers of either side. The aponeurosis of the fibers of either side, they decussate and forms the top of your linea alba, extending from xiphoid process to the top of your pubic tubercle. It will be extending. So some fibers beneath which are present, they get folded by itself. So they get folded, get thickened, extends from anterior superior iliac spine to pubic tubercle, forming as an inguinal ligament. So this is about the origin and insertion of the top here external oblique muscle. Next, within the external oblique muscle and its aponeurosis, so muscle we have seen when it is coming and inserting, some of the fibers near at the top insertion part, they are getting as a top here aponeurosis. So this is the external oblique muscle, fleshy part, and this is the aponeurosis part. So that aponeurosis part, a part of it, the upper part, get inserted into the top of linea alba, whereas the lower part gets folded and forming the inguinal ligament. So when you see the external oblique muscle, there are few important points that you have to remember. That is, what are the ligaments, are the extensions, are the expansions of external oblique aponeurosis. The external oblique aponeurosis have three expansions or three extensions it has. One extension of external oblique aponeurosis is, this is a reflected part of inguinal ligament. The reflected part of inguinal ligament. One more, pectineal ligament. This is the pectineal ligament or ligament of Cooper. One more is this triangular part. It is called as lacunar ligament. These are the reflections of the top here inguinal ligament. The external oblique aponeurosis, if you have come across here, you have seen that this aponeurosis get thickened, folded itself and forms a ligament which extends from anterior superior iliac spine to the top of pubic tubercle as a ligament which is called as inguinal ligament. This consists of some expansions or some extensions. So which are the extensions of external oblique only? These extensions are, one is reflected part of inguinal ligament, pectineal ligament, and one more is that of the lacunar ligament. So we will see that each ligament in detail. First, coming to the top, the reflected part of the top here, inguinal ligament. So this is a reflected part of the top here, inguinal ligament. So we have seen the inguinal ligament is that it is extending a ligament which is about 10 to 14 centimeters in length, extending from anterior superior iliac spine to the top of the pubic tubercle. So this is the top here, inguinal ligament. What is, if this is an inguinal ligament, what is the reflected part of inguinal ligament? The reflected part of the inguinal ligament within the top here external oblique aponeurosis, if you have come across, this is a ring what it is forming within the aponeuron which is called a superficial inguinal ring. Some of the fibers of the lower part of superficial inguinal ring are the inferior crux of the superficial inguinal ring fibers extend upward medially and insert into the top of linea alba, forming as reflected part of inguinal ligament. I will be saying again. So what is reflected part of inguinal ligament? So this is a reflected part of inguinal ligament. So this is a superficial inguinal ring. So superficial inguinal ring. Some of the fibers which are attached to the top of pubic tubercle, these are the some of the fibers of inguinal ligament which are attached to the top of pubic tubercle. Some of the fibers which are attached to the pubic tubercle extend upward, forward, medially and get attached to the top of the linea alba, forming as a reflected part of, so this get attached to the top of linea alba, forming as reflected part of inguinal ligament. Same way when this goes upward, forward and medially when it is going, same the fibers from the top of your opposite side also come and insert to the top of your linea alba. So the reflected part of the inguinal ligament at this side and reflected part of the inguinal ligament of this side, both will be joining at the top of the linea alba. So this is also called as, so when you see the superficial inguinal ring, it consists of lateral crus and the medial crus. So this is lateral crus and the top of your medial crus. This is another extra crux which is formed by the top, the reflected part of inguinal ligament. So this extra crux is formed by reflected part of inguinal ligament. So this is about the reflected part of inguinal ligament. Next is one more ligament of external oblique, that is extension, is lacunar ligament or Gibbernard's ligament. So what is this lacunar or Gibbernard ligament? Again, lacunar or Gibbernard ligaments is an extension of the top of your inguinal ligament. The lower inferior surface, these are the fibers which are coming downwards, backward from the inferior surface. So this is the inguinal ligament. From the inguinal ligament, inferiorly this is coming, these fibers are coming and getting inserted into, the fibers are getting inserted into the top of the pectin pubis. So this is part which is called as pectineal line, pectin pigment or pectin pubis. They get inserted into the top of your pectin pubis. So this is the lacunar ligament what you are seeing. So this lacunar ligament, when you see the description of this ligament, it is triangular in shape with apex pointing towards the pubic tubercle. Base is formed by the top of the femoral ring, that is the medial border of the femoral ring is forming, that is a concave base free margin, which is forming the top of the medial boundary of the top of your femoral ring. This is the femoral ring medially what we have studied. Next, the upper part of the top of your lacunar ligament is grooved. This is a grooved part or the floor, which is a grooved part which you are seeing as forming the upper part extension of the top of your lacunar ligament. So this is the apex which is forming the pubic tubercle. This is the base which is forming the top of your ring, femoral ring, boundary of the femoral ring. This is the upper part of the top of your lacunar ligament, which is formed the grooved wall of the inguinal canal, or the floor of the inguinal canal is formed by grooved part of the lacunar ligament. Next, after this one more extension of external oblique is pectineal ligament or Cooper's ligament. Yes, pectineal ligament or Cooper's ligament is, this is what we have seen that of the base of the top here. This is the base of the top of the lacunar ligament. Some of the fibers of the base of the lacunar ligament, which is forming the medial boundary of the femoral ring, extends laterally. So some of the bound fibers you can see, this is the base of the top of the lacunar ligament. Some fibers of the top here which are forming the base of lacunar ligament extend laterally from the top here pubic tubercle or the top here symphysis pubis, pubic tubercle, pectine pubis to the top here iliopubic eminence, forming a ligament which is called as Cooper's ligament or pectineal ligament. So these are the fibers which are extending from the base to the top here iliopubic eminence, forming a ligament which is called as Cooper ligament or pectineal ligament. The Cooper ligament or pectineal ligament is mostly helpful for the top of the repairs of the top ear hernias. So this is helpful during the repairs of the top ear hernial surgeries. These are helpful. So these are the three extensions of external oblique muscle along with its aponeurosis. So I want to repeat the top ear ligaments again. Yeah, I think you have understood the origin and insertion of the top ear external oblique muscle. Very simple if you see it. External oblique coming from the top of your ribs, lower ribs, from the top of your outer border and lower surface, getting inserted. Yes, these are the fibers which are coming downward, forward and medially. You can see the posterior, which are the fleshy fibers which are inserting into the top of your iliac crest, outer lip of the top of your iliac crest, but other, and they are forming as a boundary which is called as lumbar boundary or the lumbar triangle or petit triangle. The other fibers, these are the top here, some fleshy fibers we have seen, but the other fibers they form as aponeurosis, getting inserted from the top of your xiphoid process to the pubic tubercle to the top of your line which is called as linea alba. It gets inserted. Some fibers here, the lateral part of the fibers, they get thickened, extends from anterior superior iliac spine to pubic tubercle, forms as a ligament which is called as the top of your inguinal ligament. So this is within the inguinal ligament, that aponeurosis which is getting thickened. You can see a ring, this is called as superficial inguinal ring that you can see here. So this is the origin and insertion of external oblique muscle. Coming to the extensions of the external oblique, it consists of three. First and foremost is the inguinal ligament. From the inguinal ligament, the other is the lacunar ligament, which is otherwise also called as Gibbernard's ligament. Other than that, there is one more ligament which is called as pectineal ligament. When you see the inguinal ligament, first, this inguinal ligament is about 12 to 14 centimeters in length, which is extending from anterior superior iliac spine to the pubic tubercle. When you see laterally, it is curved, whereas medially it is horizontal. The curvedness of the top of your lateral part, it is because of the pull of the top of your fascia which is present in the thigh, that is fascia lata, which is at an angle. When external oblique aponeurosis comes in, it is an angle of 30 to 40 degrees. This inguinal ligament, there is an extension of the top of your inguinal ligament which is called as reflected part of the inguinal ligament. That reflected part of the inguinal ligament is that which is extending from the top here. Some of the fibers, that is the inferior fibers of the superficial inguinal ring, crux of the top, the superficial inguinal ring, they extend downward, backward and medially and get inserted into the top the linea alba. Same way it also goes good well for the top your opposite side, forming the ligament which is called as reflected part, because inguinal ligament reflection part only it is forming, so that is called as reflected part of inguinal ligament. One more here is Gibbonard's ligament are lacunar, so this is a triangular in shape. The apex is formed by pubic tubercle. Base is a concave free margin which is forming one of the boundary for the top of your femoral ring. Next, the upper part boundary is grooved. That grooved boundary is forming the floor or the grooved border of the top of your inguinal canal. After it, the one more ligament that you come across as extension is Cooper's ligament or pectineal ligament. This is formed by the fibers which are forming the base of the top of the Gibbonard ligament. They extend laterally, extending from pecten pubis to the iliopubic eminence, forming a ligament which is called as pectineal ligament or Cooper's ligament, which is helpful for hernial surgeries, repair of hernial surgery. This is about external oblique. Yes, yeah. All in all, when you see it, I have also revised it. Inguinal ligament, extension is reflected part of inguinal ligament, lacunar ligament, pectineal ligament or Cooper's ligament. Lacunar ligament is also called as Gibbonard's ligament. This is a reflected part. You can see this is a superficial inguinal ring. Some of the fibers goes forward and that appear medially. Same way of opposite gets into the linea alba. When you see the lacunar, yes, as we have discussed, it is triangular. Apex, this is the base, concave, forming the femoral ring. This is the base part, which is that of your grooved part, means upper surface is that of your groove. This is a pectineal ligament, which is extending from along the iliopubic eminence to the pecten pubis, forming a ligament which is called as Cooper's ligament. After the external oblique, the next second muscle laterally is internal oblique muscle, along with that is aponeurosis. When you see the origin of internal oblique muscle, so this is the inguinal ligament. The internal oblique takes origin from the lateral 2/3 part of the inguinal ligament. So this is what we are seeing. From the anterior superior iliac spine to the pubic tubercle, it will be extending. From lateral 2/3 of the inguinal ligament, the origin of the internal obliques takes place. So one origin is from here. The other is from the top, the intermediate area of the iliac crest. This is the iliac crest. From the intermediate area of the iliac crest, this is the inner lip, intermediate, outer. So from the intermediate area of the iliac crest, the internal oblique takes origin. Next, and some of the fibers of the internal oblique also come along with the top here, thoracolumbar fascia. Yes, this is a thoracolumbar fascia. Some fibers also come from the top here, thoracolumbar fascia. So when you see the origin of internal oblique, there are some inguinal fibers. These inguinal fibers are coming from the top here, lateral 2/3 part of the top here inguinal ligament. Some fibers are coming from the top, the intermediate area of the top here iliac crest. You can see these are the fibers. And some fibers are coming from the top, the posterior fibers are coming from the top here thoracolumbar fascia. So this is the origin of the top here internal oblique. When you see the insertion of the top here internal oblique, the insertion goes in this way. So these are the inguinal fibers we have said, which is coming from the lateral 2/3. The inguinal fibers passes forward medially and get inserted into the top of your linea alba. This forms, these fibers, the inguinal fibers, forms a conjoined tendon with transverse abdominis, means they join with the top of your fibers of the top of your transverse abdominis, which is the third muscle, which we will be discussing there also. So these inguinal fibers forms a conjoined tendon. Other than that, they also form the top, the anterior wall of the top here. These fibers go down forward medially, insert to the top of your linea alba, forming the anterior wall of the top of the inguinal canal. This is about the inguinal fibers. When you see the fibers, the other fibers, the upper fibers, some of the fibers which are coming here, these fibers go backwards, arch around the top here backwards, forming and the top here goes backward, then come forward medially and get inserted to the linea alba, forming the top, the roof of the top here inguinal canal. So when you see it, internal oblique forms inguinal canal, anterior wall of the top here inguinal canal is formed by the inguinal fibers, whereas some of the fibers of the same internal oblique also form the roof of the top here inguinal canal. Next, the other fibers which are coming from the thoracolumbar fascia, yes, they get inserted into the lower 3 or 4 costal cartilages. So they get inserted into the lower 3 or 4 costal cartilages. The fibers which are remaining in between. So this is about the inguinal fibers here, which are forming the anterior wall and the roof. These are about the posterior fibers which are coming from thoracolumbar fascia, inserting into the top the lower 3 or 4 ribs. They will be inserting. Other than that, the middle fibers what? They form an aponeurosis and gets inserted into the top the linea alba, which is extending from the top the xiphoid process to the top the pubic tubercle. But one point to be remembered here is when internal oblique is getting inserted into the top linea alba, it is unlike, it is not forming as directly and inserting an aponeurosis and getting inserted. So within this one, in the middle, we have said earlier when we are starting the class, there are 3 flat muscles and 2 vertical muscles. So in the middle of the abdomen, the anterior abdominal wall, the 2 vertical muscles, that is rectus abdominis and pyramidalis muscle, is present here. So at the lateral border of the rectus abdominis muscle, the internal oblique gets divided or splits into, you can see this is the internal oblique muscle. At the lateral wall of the top of your rectus abdominis, this is here you will be getting the rectus abdominis muscle here, yeah. So here it will be the lateral wall of the rectus abdominis. So at the lateral wall of the rectus abdominis, the internal oblique divides into 2 laminae, anterior laminae and posterior laminae, encroach the top of your rectus sheath, that is it forms the top of your rectus sheath as the anterior wall and the posterior wall, enclose the rectus abdominis and goes in frame. So this is that you have to remember that internal oblique at the top the some of the fibers of the internal, that is the middle fibers, fleshy fibers of internal oblique, they form in aponeurosis. Before inserting into the linea alba, they get splits into the top of your 2 laminae, anterior and posterior laminae, and forming the top of your walls of the top of the rectus sheath. So there is also one point of the difference here when you come across and see, that is the difference here is when you see the internal oblique, as we have discussed here, when it is coming and inserting to the linea alba, we have said the internal oblique divides into 2, that is the anterior and the posterior laminae, and get inserted. It divides anterior and posterior and get inserted. But between the top of your umbilicus and the top of your arcuate line, upper 3/4 part, in the upper 3/4 part, this is the top of your umbilicus here. So in between this 3/4 part and the arcuate line, in between the arcuate line and the top of your midway, here the internal oblique is dividing into 2, that is the anterior and posterior laminae. But beneath the arcuate line, the internal oblique doesn't divide. It lies only one. It is only the one sheet. There is no division of internal oblique as anterior and posterior. Along with internal oblique, even transverse abdominis comes and inserts directly, forms an aponeurosis and insert. There is the meaning of that one is above the arcuate line, the internal oblique is dividing into 2 laminae, but beneath the arcuate line, the internal oblique is not dividing. It is only forming as a one single part, single laminae, and getting inserted into the top of your pubic tubercle along with the top of your pubic crest, that is linea alba lower part. Means upper 3/4 part it is dividing, but lower 1/4 part, the internal oblique, there is no division of the top of your internal oblique. Yes, this is one of the interesting point. One more point that should be noted in the interesting point in internal oblique is, so this is the internal oblique. We have said that internal oblique origin is from the lateral 2/3 of the top of your inguinal ligament. It gets its origin. Along with the top of your internal oblique, there is one more muscle which is called as cremaster muscle. This is a muscle which is mostly seen in males, but it is not well formed in the top of females. Only some fibers or some fasciculi are present around a ligament which is called as round ligament of uterus. Around the round ligament of uterus, you can see these muscle fibers, a part of the fasciculi, that is a cremaster muscles in the females. But unlike in females, it is absent. It is not well developed. We should not say as absent, but it is not well developed. But coming in males, it is formed. It is well formed, which is called as cremaster muscle. This cremaster muscle is derived from the fibers of some of the fibers of the internal oblique. Only is forming as the top of a cremaster muscle. So we have said the internal oblique is taking origin from the lateral 2/3 part of the top of inguinal ligament. The medial part of the inguinal ligament gives origin to that these are derived from these fibers which are derived from internal oblique. Some fibers which are coming from the medial part of the inguinal ligament extend downwards as a fasciculi, as a U-shaped loops. You can see as a U-shaped loops, and forming as a muscle which is called as a cremaster muscle, gets inserted into the top of scrotum. It forms a slings in this way and gets inserted. This cremaster muscle consists of superficial set and a deep set of the muscles forming loops and getting inserted into the top of the scrotum. So this is about the interesting points of the top of your internal oblique. So when you are studying about the internal oblique, do remember that of your origin. First origin of internal oblique. The first origin is from the top of your lateral 2/3 of the top of your inguinal ligament. Other than that, from the intermediate area of the iliac crest, then from the thoracolumbar fascia. These are from the top of your outer, that is the lateral 2/3 of the inguinal ligament, intermediate area, thoracolumbar fascia, the origin. When you come across the insertion of the internal oblique, these fibers which are coming from the top of your lateral 2/3 are called as inguinal fibers. They form as that of the anterior wall of the inguinal canal. They come forward medially and get inserted into the linea alba, forming an aponeurosis. Okay, these are called as inguinal fibers. That is to be remembered is it is forming the anterior wall. Some fibers which are going backward, then coming forward medially, getting inserted into the linea alba, also forms the roof of the top of your inguinal canal. This internal oblique is forming the roof and also the anterior wall of the top of your inguinal canal. The other fibers, that is the posterior fibers which are coming from thoracolumbar fascia, are getting inserted into the lower costal cartilages, lower 3 to 4 costal cartilages. But the middle fleshy fibers, they form as an aponeurosis. Interesting point here is when they are coming and inserting, they divide into, at the top of your lateral border of the top of your rectus abdominis muscle, the internal oblique muscle divides into anterior and posterior lamina and then forms the wall of the top of the rectus sheath. They form and they enclose the rectus abdominis muscle forming, but they form as the anterior and posterior wall of the internal oblique. This is a very important point that you have to know it of the internal oblique. One more point here is, when we have said it is dividing into two anterior and posterior lamina, you have to remember above the arcuate line the internal oblique is dividing into two, but below the arcuate line it is only a single layer which is undivided, getting only inserted into the top of a linea alba directly. There is no division as anterior and posterior lamina. One more interesting point of internal oblique is cremaster muscle that you see it mostly in males is derived from some of the fibers of only the internal oblique, gives origin to the top of the cremaster muscle, which is having superficial and deep set. This set are coming from the medial part of the top of the inguinal ligament. They form as a sling around the scrotum and get inserted to the scrotum. So when you ask where is this muscle in the females, there it is around the round ligament of uterus. You can see some fasciculi and some fibers around the round ligament. Otherwise, it is well developed in that of the males. Yes. One more muscle of the top of your lateral anterolateral muscle is transverse abdominis. Transversus abdominis, as the name indicates, is it is transverse or horizontal. So when you see the origin of this transverse abdominis muscle, the origin of it is inguinal ligament, lateral 1/3 part, transverse abdomen, whereas if you see the internal oblique, it gets origin from the top of the 2/3 part of the top of your inguinal ligament. But transverse abdominis take origin from the lateral 1/3 part of the inguinal ligament. From the inner lip of the iliac crest, means we have seen the outer lip, intermediate and inner lip. So from the inner lip of the iliac crest, from the lower 6 to 7 costal cartilages. So this is what we are seeing, transversely fibers, which is called as transversus abdominis. So this is the origin from the lateral 2/3, from the inner lip of iliac crest, thoracolumbar fascia, and from the lower 6 to 7, that is 7 to 12 costal cartilages, these muscle fibers are coming. So this is what we have said, that from the inner lip of the top of your iliac crest, you can see it here. This is a transversus abdominis, which is coming from the inner lip of the iliac crest. This is the origin. Coming to the insertion of the top, the transversus abdominis. The transverse abdominis or insertion is, it is same when you see it as that of your internal oblique. But there is a mild differentiation. When you see that of the inguinal origin, which is coming from there in the internal oblique, the inguinal origin is about lateral 2/3 part, but here when you are seeing transverse abdominis, it is coming from 1/3 part of the inguinal ligament. Yes, it is coming and getting inserted into the linea alba, which is forming the top, the roof of the top of your inguinal canal. So when you see that, it forms backwards and only forms a roof. Unlike when you see the internal oblique, the lower fibers, inguinal fibers, are forming the top of your anterior wall, whereas some fibers which are going behind, coming in front, they are forming as that of your roof. But when you see the transverse abdominis, it forms only the top, the roof of the top of your inguinal canal. So this is about the top of your fibers which are coming from the top of your inguinal canal. Other fibers which are coming from the thoracolumbar fascia and the top of the outer lip of the iliac crest goes transversely, forms an aponeurosis and gets inserted into the top of your linea alba, which is extending from xiphoid process to the top of your pubic tubercle. The difference here is, unlike the top of your internal oblique muscle, the transverse abdominis does not split into anterior and posterior lamina. It forms only as a single layer and forms as a boundary of the top of your abdominal wall, means that a rectus sheath, it forms a boundary, gets inserted into the top of your linea alba, which is extending from the top of your xiphoid to the top of your pubic tubercle. So this is about the top of your, so the important points here is, one is that you have to know it, unlike the top of your internal oblique muscle, it is not forming the two, that is a floor and the top of your roof. It is only forming, that is anterior wall and the top of your roof. It is only forming the roof. Yes, transverse abdominis along with the top of your internal oblique, yes, it is forming as a conjoint tendon. We will be seeing the later part. What is that conjoint tendon? It is there. Next, other thing is that there is no split as anterior and posterior lamina. It goes and inserts into the top here. It forms as aponeurosis, gets inserted into the top of your linea alba, which is extending from the top of your xiphoid to the top of your pubic tubercle. So this is some things that you have to know it. Now, coming to it, what is the conjoint tendon? For this conjoint tendon, you can see the conjoint tendon is a tendon which is formed by the top, the transverse abdominis muscle and internal oblique muscle. So the fibers which are coming from the top of your inguinal fibers, at this part, both transverse abdominis and internal oblique muscle, they combine at the insertion part and forms as falx inguinalis. So this is forming as a falx inguinalis. That conjoint tendon, mostly the 2/3 part of the conjoint tendon is formed by transversus abdominis. Rather, 1/3 part is formed by that of your internal oblique muscle. So the aponeurosis of 2/3 part transverse and 1/3 part is forming a conjoint tendon. Mostly the fibers, inguinal fibers, are forming as that of your conjoint tendon. The other most important thing here is, it is forming what boundary it is forming the inguinal canal is, it is forming the posterior wall of the top of your inguinal canal. So this is about the conjoint tendon. It is also called as falx inguinalis. Yes, that is about the top of your muscles of external oblique, internal oblique, transverse abdominis with origin and its insertion. Coming to the vasculature or blood supply of these three muscles, external, internal and transverse abdominis muscle, it is supplied by superior epigastric artery, which is a branch of the internal thoracic artery or internal mammary artery. Inferior epigastric artery, you will be coming across again in the rectus sheath also. Inferior epigastric artery, branches of external iliac. Other than that, there are also some branches. When we have studied that of your femoral artery, we have come across superficial and deep branches. That is superficial circumflex iliac, deep circumflex iliac, lower intercostal and subcostal vessels are which, along with arteries, veins are also present. This is that of your vasculature of the top here, anterolateral muscles of the top here abdomen. Coming to the nerve supply, the nerve supply of the top here anterolateral muscles are lower 7 thoracoabdominal, lower 6 thoracoabdominal nerves from T7 to T11. Iliohypogastric, mostly this is called good for external oblique, but internal oblique is also supplied along with transverse abdomen. It is also supplied by iliohypogastric nerve and ilioinguinal nerves. Actions of the anterior abdominal wall. Yes, the most important action is expulsive acts, forceful expiratory acts, movement of the trunks, and movements of the top here respiration. Normally, if you have to tell, the movements can be described as one which is happening in the vertebral column, the movements, others which are happening in the top here viscera. So in the viscera, the most important action, what you have studied about external oblique, internal oblique and transverse abdominis, what these muscles do, what is the action is, they retain the viscera at their position. So they retain retainment or support of the top here abdominal viscera. Next, they are also helpful in some expulsive acts like vomitings, micturition, defecations. All in these expulsive acts, anterior abdominal muscles are helpful. So when there is a defecation or when there is vomiting, anterior abdominal pressure increases, which causes a compression of the top of your viscera. So this is done by means of anterior abdominal muscles. Yes, they retain the top of your viscera, whatever place they are present. So retainment is also done by these muscles. This is one part of the top of your function. Other than that, the other part of the function which holds good for the top of your lumbar, for the top of your vertebral column is, in the vertebral column, these muscles are helpful for flexion of the top of your trunk. Lateral flexion means one side, if one side is not, only one side, lateral flexion and rotation of the top of your trunk is done by means of the top of your muscles of the top of your anterior abdominal wall. Other than that, yes, it is also helpful for suspension of the top of your testis and tensing the top of the linea alba, what we have said. Yes, so all in all, when you see it, external oblique, internal oblique, transverse abdominis, one function of the anterior abdominal wall is compresses the abdomen. Yes, and one more in the vertebral column, the other function is it is helpful for lateral trunk rotation. So yes, all in all, we have studied about all these. When you come across, we have divided into two functions. One is the function on the vertebral column, one is on the top of your abdomen. On the abdomen, yes, it compresses the abdomen or visceral organs. Coming on the vertebral column, it is helpful for the top here. Mostly on one side, it is a trunk rotation. It is helpful. Next is, what is the clinical of external oblique? Is external oblique, internal oblique and transverse abdomen is, it is, they are helpful for one type of the top here movement which is called as abdominothoracic rhythm. This abdominothoracic rhythm is whenever abdominal muscle contract and they relax with the top, they contract and they relax with the respiration. Means parallelly they will be going, they contract and relax with the respiration. In abdominothoracic rhythm, normally during inspiration, when the sternum moves forward, chest also expands, the anterior abdominal wall also moves forward. So when you see it, the chest sternum moves forward, even the anterior abdominal wall moves forward. But if this is not going in this way, when this rhythm is not going in this way, what happens? When the chest expands and the anterior abdominal wall remains stationary, then anterior abdominal wall is not moving forward, the parietal peritoneum is inflamed, which is causing the reflex contraction. Means if it is not happening in this way, so when normally is, whenever there is anterior abdominothoracic rhythm. Whenever this sternum is moving, even the anterior abdominal wall is moving. But if it is not in this way, it causes a compression. Other than moving front, it causes a compression and causes that of your parietal peritoneum. In this, when you see it, in the parietal peritoneum, it is because highly inflamed. If it is both contract, highly probable there is a probability of parietal peritoneum getting inflamed. This is one. One more is visceroptosis. What is visceroptosis? Normally, the anterior abdominal wall, it gives tonicity of the abdominal muscles. All the anterior abdominal muscles is helpful for giving the tone or anterior abdominal tonicity. But coming into that of your females, after 3 or 4 pregnancies, what is happening is the anterior abdominal, the tonicity is lost. Because when the tonicity is lost, what happens to the lower abdomen is it gets, yes, it gets inflamed in this way or bulge in this way, representing some, we may think as that of abdominal tumors or ovarian tumors in this case. So that this is called as visceroptosis. So we should exclude from this. It might be because of that of a weakened tonicity of the anterior abdominal wall also it can happen. So this is called as visceroptosis. Thank you. Yeah. Stay healthy. Yeah, the streaming. Stop.